Welcome back to the Change Physician Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Cady, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and joined by our lovely guest again, Dr. Dianah Lake. And we're going to chat everything locums. This conversation kind of came up before, and thank you again for joining us, Dr. Di.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I know we have both done locums, probably a little bit more than Kevin has. I wanted to chat about, you can always pipe in there, Kevin. But I want to just bring up, I started doing locums even while I was an intern, way back in the day, and had a little bit of experience there, but I really didn't pop back into it until this past year after I left a group, of anesthesia group. And I went in, started working for a locums company and was assigned out of state. So that's one topic I think it's good to cover, is that we're going to go to another state. We're obviously going to have to worry about getting a different license.
Yeah.
There is a consortium where, depending on which state you have your primary license, you can get it easily approved in other states, depending on the state. But of course, I'm in Texas, not part of this consortium, and I can write down the acronym for that. I think it's IMCC, but I will put it in the notes. But I had to get the license, and how long that takes is really important as to whether or not you can take that particular job. But most of the time, these locums companies are really good at, they'll pay for, getting that license, they'll expedite it, they'll do all the heavy lifting, but of course you have to have all of your, documents in order to get that thing done. Yeah, so I know that was kind of the longest thing. That wasn't just the longest thing, there was a credentialing side. Did you find that to be the longest thing with locums?
So that's a great question. So for the states, so I have 7 licenses right now. I had 8. My DC expired, so I'm going to be renewing it. So that'll be 8. Right. So some of the states like Maine that I mentioned in one of our previous chat that we had, Maine, in my experience, was the quickest one, less than 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. I was able to get my Maine license. Yep. And because the facility I was going to had someone leaving, they really were in a crunch to get someone. So they also wanted things to move along. And in that scenario, that's the best of both worlds, right? You've got a short licensure process in the state, and then the hospital is looking to really move your application forward. Mm-hmm. So they can get you in there to cover whatever, shifts they really need covered. That's your perfect situation that you would want.
Right.
If you have a situation where, they're just kind of looking for people to fill in the gaps long term, but there's no real urgency, then you fall into the normal scenario, which would be you got to wait for when the actual credentialing team is going to meet. They'll usually only meet once a month.
Right.
So if your application gets in on the 14th and their meeting was on the 12th, you got to wait till the next month. So that's a 1-month delay right there. Sometimes they will do like an emergency meeting where they don't have everyone, like the quota of everyone that should be there, and they'll do something sort of, expedited because they really want to move you forward. So it really depends on the hospital and the relationship they have with that group that's covering the ER. There's so many different, variables that really play into it to push you. But yes, credentialing and licensure are going to be the 2 longest parts of it.
Right. And so did you find that most people offered travel was compensated and the lodging was compensated as well?
Yes, that was required. For me, mm-hmm. I needed to have my flights, covered, my hotel covered. I covered my own meals and my own gas. So meals and gas were on me, and those are, you can write those off. They're tax deductible. You can write those off as an independent contractor. But the flight, the hotel were covered by either the hospital or by the recruiting company. They got their money on the back end, but I didn't have to pay for those.
Right. And so you're, emergency medicine. I've done anesthesia doing these locums. What would you say the percent pay is higher than what you would get paid with a regular job? Of course, it's complicated with benefits and all that, but generally speaking, like 10, 20% more? Or?
So I would say probably closer to, let's do the math. if you were getting paid $160 an hour and you went to $280 an hour, I mean, that's what we're talking. Good. You know, that's like over $100 per hour more. Yeah. So it's significant. But like you said, as a, you know, as an independent contractor, you're no longer getting the 401k matching. Yep. You're no longer getting part of your health insurance covered, you know. So although you're getting that difference, you may be getting $80 more per hour than you would as an employee, or $100 more per hour, at least in the field of emergency medicine. But then you're covering all of your expenses. Like for me, I had to set up my own payroll. I had to set up my SEP account, you know, to put pension money in. Right. So I, over the years, it's been 4 years of me doing it now, but over the years, slowly, I've been setting up different, you know, retirement, you know, pockets of money so that I'm ready for retirement. My number is 57.
There you go. well, you definitely explained that there's a learning curve on being your own boss, and you have to be patient with yourself. We all can learn this over time, and some of us are more detail-oriented than others, but there's, you know, an accountant, you know, those things can help you understand that over time and layer in those various things, so you do things appropriately, because you're going to have like quarterly estimated taxes. You got to figure out what that's going to be. You know, there's various things to learn. I do want to mention the idea of contracts. So I've had contracts, when I read the fine print, it'll say that you can't work for those people directly, independently, for like 6 months to 3 years. So there is a really important thing when people look at contracts, because if you find a good place and they like you, you might want to kick out the middleman at some point. So did you notice anything with your contracts and any dates?
Every contract I've had since 2017 has had a non-compete in there, where if they're the ones bringing you in, if that agency, if that recruiting agency is bringing you in, then they have a clause in your contract that says you cannot leave us to go directly work for this company. So maybe you can leave us and go work elsewhere for X number of months or a year. And if you choose to come back after that and work for this company and use the connections you've made here, that's fine. But it can't be you leave us and go directly there.
Right, right.
So every contract I've signed has had that in there.
And I think that brings up another important point, though, is these are contracts. And right, one of the things to be considered about that is just because it's a contract doesn't necessarily mean that it's written in stone. In fact, by their nature, a contract is not written in stone. And so, and I want to bring that up because if you, my understanding is I don't do locums work at all. But my understanding with this is a lot of times people will present the contract, like they'll do this with hospitals. Like they'll present the contract like this is just the contract, and then they won't want you to ask any questions. And with locums, and particularly the situations that you mentioned, Di, where things are faster when people are desperate. And if people are desperate, there's more room for contract negotiations. Yes. And so have you done that where you've actually, you know, they've had something you said, you know what, I need this to have this changed in the contract, or maybe you're negotiating rates because the rates they quote you can change as well.
Absolutely. So, I've negotiated rates. I remember one of the places I worked in Southern Virginia, I don't know what happened to the person that was supposed to cover Christmas, New Year, like they had their schedule written out. And this person just eloped, or I don't know what you want to call it. Just took off. And they needed someone last minute. And I said, look, you know, not only am I going to have to leave my family, I have to travel, you know, and this ER was not a quiet place. It was pretty busy. It was, you know, affiliated with Duke. We had strokes. I mean, I have given the most TPA in that facility than anywhere else I've worked. So it was very busy. And I said, if I'm going to come and cover Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and you want me to cover, you know, New Year's Day as well, and I'm leaving my family, you're going to have to pay me a bonus.
Right.
You know, it's not that I'm trying to be difficult, but I mean, I think in any, you know, industry of any line of work, if someone wants something to be done last minute with urgency, there's a fee for that.
Yeah.
And you should know your worth as a locums doc. I think sometimes locums docs are nervous that they're going to lose their opportunity and then they're going to be out of work. So they just kind of go with the flow. But if you have 2 or 3 places that you're working and you have something to fall back on, you can actually walk in with confidence and say, look, this is what I think is my value right now. So not only do I want time and a half for working the holiday, just like you would pay your employees, but I need to have a bonus, and I need to get that bonus before I catch my flight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. On this last question for you, what would you say are predominantly the pros, but the pros and cons of doing locums?
Oh, great question. So I'll say my experience. So the pros of it was I get to control my schedule. I travel 6 times a year recreationally.
Love
so
it.
I'm always in somebody's country, other than my own. I travel quite a bit. And at my previous job, that was really an issue for me, not being able to plan things ahead of time, which was one of the things that, became an impetus to leave, was really wanting to have autonomy. And it gives you an incredible amount of autonomy over your work schedule. You tell them what your availability is.
Right.
So you tell them the days you want to work. I haven't worked Christmas in 3 years because I'm just not available.
Yeah.
With a smile.
I love it.
And so you get to choose your schedule. You get to choose how many shifts you want to work. Yeah. So if you want to only do 15, you do 15. If you want to do 12, you do 12. You get to control your income, basically. You are in the driver's seat with that. Another thing I would say that's been really good is you have more family time. You get to do the things you enjoy that maybe before, there were restrictions around because work came, with the time, limits. Oh, you can only have this many days off at a time, or, and things like that. So right now, family time is something I can plan months in advance, and I don't have to worry about somebody, taking that away from me. The income is definitely more per hour, but you have to cover your own expenses for health insurance and for, 401k. So you need to know that going in, that, you have to do the math to make sure that it makes sense for you. The other thing is, as a self-employed person, I get to do a SEP account. I can put up to $56,000 into my SEP account, which is my self-employment pension every year, if I have that to put away. And that then reduces my taxable income. So if you put that 56 away into your retirement account, it reduces how much you're going to pay taxes on. So, that's one good thing. Whereas with the 401k, I think it goes up to 18.6. If you're an employee, you can only put in about 18,600 in 401k and you're capped. Mm-hmm. Whereas as an independent contractor, you can go up to 56,000. And you can do on top of that a solo 401k on top of the SEP. So it's just a huge, bucket you have there to put money away if you can afford to.
Right.
So those are some of the great benefits that I've seen and I'm using with that. Mm-hmm. For the cons, I would say sometimes, people are concerned about stability, mm-hmm. because you do have to go from one job to another job to another job. And if you're lucky, I have actually the one of the places I'm at now is a 4-year contract, which is sweet.
Great.
So I don't have to worry about it because I'm there for 4 years, mm-hmm. which is not typical for locums. Those locums typically would be 3 months. It may even just be for a string of shifts, and that's it. It could be 6 days in a row and they don't need you anymore. Right. And they'll go through this whole credentialing just for you to work 6 days. Or
well, they like you too, obviously.
Yes, or it could be 6 months, or so there's there's variability in how long the assignments are. I have another place in Florida I've been working for 3 years ongoing. It's not every month, but every few months I go. And so that's the other thing I would say is just the predictability of work, not knowing if the contract is going to be canceled, because the contract could be canceled within 30 days. Right. They can cancel your contract 30 days or greater. So once you're less than 30 days, then you're locked in. to that contract. They cannot cancel you within 30 days. But, if you booked for, say, it's July and you booked for September, they could cancel you.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you have to worry about. If you get canceled and you don't have another, you don't have a backup, now you're losing income.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask you a little bit about this mindset, because you had mentioned it in this process here about locums physicians undervalue themselves. And I would kind of wager that physicians in general have a tendency to undervalue our services. This is why we continually see a lot of the stories on The Change Physician about how people we're doing things because we think it's the right thing to do, and yet we're not getting any sort of value exchange for it. So from that kind of perspective, as a locums physician, what would you tell to doctors who maybe are thinking about locums, but are just listening to whatever the recruiter says, aren't looking at their contracts, maybe they're listening to things, oh, these people really want and need you, and that's just the way it is, we can't pay anymore. What would you say to that?
I would say you're the doctor. You're the one who's going to be in there doing the work, and you're valuable, and you know that going in. But I think sometimes there's this trepidation that, if I, stir the waters too much, I may lose this contract, and then I won't have anything to fall back on. So then if that's the case for you, have multiple contracts. Don't just be stuck with one company, because as we mentioned before in the talk, they could cancel you at any time. So you kind of need to put yourself out there where you have 3 or 4 active contracts going on. So you're never worried about if someone cancels, and you can go in there fully confident that, you're going to be valued, your worth, and you're going to present, a case for being paid appropriately. So that's what I would say. Just have that backup, so you don't even have to worry about, the potential of losing a contract. If you lose it, you lose it. There are many more. You have to go in with this abundance mindset and not be afraid.
And I guess to kind of add on to that a little bit is, how many contracts do you see out there? I mean, if you turn down one, is that like, oh my God, there's not another one for 6 months, or do you see more contracts than? I know COVID's a little bit weird, but.
Yes. So with coronavirus right now, it's been a little less available. Actually, there was a lot available right when we went into the pandemic. They were looking for locums physicians all over the place in all of the hot spots. But what we're seeing now is there's been sort of a slower, turnaround for what's available. So people are holding on to what they have until things turn around. But actually, we're on the upswing again. I'm seeing more people calling. The last week, I got 3 calls where they're calling again saying, hey, we have, an opportunity in Connecticut. We see your license in Connecticut. And I'm just not interested right now. I'm good. So it's a good thing to, have that flexibility. So yes, I would say we're on the upswing again, where you can have multiple, and you just have to put in the work up front to get the credentialing and all those things, but you can have multiple contracts going on at the same time all the time. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a way to feel more comfortable and confident that this can, support you.
And then you walk in, what I do, I said, listen, I'm making my schedule for October. So-and-so wants 8 shifts. What
leverage.
Yes.
Yeah, I did that.
I'm the prize here. Hello.
It is amazing when you're just like 3 or 4 people are wanting you, and you want to kind of create your schedule instead of just respond to everyone else. I
have
think
to let
it's
them
great.
know, look, if I can't do this right now, I'm going to give these dates to another company. And if you come back around, and I've had that happen before, where they'll come back around and want to book you, and I'm like, hey, you snooze, you lose.
That's right. That's awesome.
It's the nature of the business. You gotta be quick with it.
And I love the fact that you know your value, though, right?
Yes.
And you're not being a jerk about it. You're just like, I'm valuable. I have a valuable skill set. People want me. If we work together, great. If we don't, then maybe next time. But I just love that.
Good.
Fantastic.
An empowered woman. That's good.
Yes.
Empowered physician.
And physician. That's right. Yeah. Well, I think you know, I think the pros, and in my personal opinion, the pros outweigh the cons, especially if you love autonomy, love to travel, like to create your own schedule, you prioritize your life, not somebody else's. And,
Yes.
you know, I want to thank you for coming on the Change Physician podcast again. And I look forward to keeping up with all your endeavors. And one day we'll get to chat again. But
Yes.
thank you. Thanks for talking locums today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
For those that are watching, I am Dr. Melissa Cady with the Change Physician podcast, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and we'll see you on the next episode.